I was born an underdog. 21 surgeries by the age of 12. Spina bifida, caused by my dad's exposure to Agent Orange in Vietnam. A kid wearing Goodwill hand-me-downs with the wrong color lunch ticket. I knew nothing would come easy, but I never doubted my right to the American dream.
This week on Dispatch Revolution, we meet a candidate who doesn't just talk about grit, he's actually lived it. Josh Turek is a two-time Paralympic gold medalist.
Guess who on the left side? Josh Turek. Back-to-back gold medals.
Nonprofit leader and the first permanently disabled member of the Iowa legislature. He's flipped one of the reddest districts in the state twice.
And I went out and I crawled stairs, dragging my wheelchair up to have conversations with every single person.
Now, he's taking on Joni Ernst for a U.S. Senate seat that could decide the balance of power in Washington, D.C. In our conversation, Josh lays out what it means to be a prairie populist.
It's someone that cares about the people, about the middle class, about small businesses, small farms.
And why healthcare, clean water, and a livable wage should unite Iowans across party lines.
People are struggling to keep their lights on. They're struggling to keep food on the table. They want someone that really cares about them, cares about the issues that matter to them, and that's the kitchen table issues.
This is more than a campaign interview. It's a conversation about hope, hard work, and the kind of leadership that shows up when it matters most.
Fight for social and economic justice, fight for the middle class, fight for the most vulnerable. That's how we're going to do it. And it's not going to be easy.
Trust me, you don't want to miss this interview. Dispatch Revolution sits down with Josh Turek. All right, Josh, thank you so much for joining us on the Dispatch Revolution podcast. Really appreciate you taking the time, especially so shortly after your announcement that you are entering the race to run for United States Senate against Joni Ernst. So for our listeners who don't know a whole lot about you, I'm going to just kick it over to you and you can give us a few minutes on who you are.
Okay, sure. But first, thanks for having me. I really appreciate this. I am Iowa State Representative Josh Turek. I am the first permanently disabled member of the Iowa legislature. I was born out here in Council Bluffs, a very blue-collar town, to a working class, maybe lower middle class family, big family. And I was born with a condition called spina bifida. And so I had my first surgery at 1 day old. I had 21 surgeries. By the age of 12, I was born without a hip socket. I was born with club feet, a variety of issues, and really had to overcome an enormous amount of economic and healthcare struggles as a kid. Thankfully for me, at the age of 12, I went to Omaha Adaptive Sports Camp. It was the first time I had been exposed to adaptive sports and honestly just fell in love with wheelchair basketball. And I come from a basketball family. Something that a lot of people don't know is I've got 3 sisters and 1 brother. Both my brother and sister ended up playing professional able-bodied basketball. So we were in a competitive environment, and I was in my wheelchair trying to compete with a brother that's 6'9" and a sister that's 6'1", just having my shot blocked at all times. And so it was nice to finally be able to compete. Fell in love with the sport, played well enough that I got the opportunity to get a partial scholarship to go to Southwest Minnesota State University. That with the help of vocational rehabilitation. Went to school, got a bachelor's degree in history, also got a master's degree in business administration. From there, I had an opportunity of something that I did not even know existed, which was when I finished my last year in college, there was a team from Italy that said, would you like to play professional wheelchair basketball? I said, wow, here's an opportunity for a kid that's only been able to read about these places in history books. Yeah, I'd love to do that. And by the time I was done, I actually had the chance to play professional basketball for many years. And between club basketball and national team, I got to play basketball on every continent on earth besides Antarctica. And the big accomplishment was, which was my real dream, was to represent my country on the field of play, and got to play in 4 Paralympic games and won 2 gold medals in wheelchair basketball. We went 28 years without winning a gold medal, even with the basketball nation. 1988 all the way till 2016, I was a part of that team that was able to win. And when I finished my basketball career after Tokyo, winning back-to-back gold medals, I decided to get involved into some for-profit work. I took a test to become what's called assistive technology professional, and this was the ability to assess and provide wheelchairs for the disabled. I wanted to be a role model for disabled kids and for newly injured individuals to let them know that even though you are disabled now and your life is going to be a little bit different, you can still go on to do great things. You can win gold medals. You can be married. You can live a successful life. I also was working with individuals that have muscular dystrophy and ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And it was in working with these individuals on a daily basis, we were inundated with denials and delays. And that was due to Iowa and Nebraska's privatization of the Medicaid system. And I thought, wow, this is fundamentally wrong. These people don't have time for all these denials. And I had found out that Iowa had never had a permanent disabled member of its legislature in the history. And so I decided that I should do something about that. For the 1 in 5 Iowans with either blind, deaf, intellectually disabled, or physically disabled, we deserve at least a seat at the table. And so in 2022, I decided, even though I knew it was going to be a really bad year for Democrats, everyone told me it could not be done. I could not win. I went out and I did it the same way that I did with basketball, which is I'm going to go out every single day, do the work. And I went out and I crawled stairs, dragging my wheelchair up to have conversations with every single person. That's Republicans, independents, and Democrats, mostly spending my time talking to Republicans. And in my first election, won by just 6 votes. It's amazing that no one can ever say that my vote doesn't matter, just 6. And that was outperforming the top of the ticket by 13 points, and turned around in the most recent election in 24 in a county that Trump won by 20 points. And in the 2 communities that I represent, Council Bluffs and Carter Lake, Trump has won by double digits. I ended up winning by nearly 6 points. And I'm really, really proud of that aspect. I would also say that along the way, both through my basketball career and even currently, I've been a director of a nonprofit organization. It's called the Ryan Martin Foundation that my best friend started. And we provide disabled kids access to adaptive sports and to adaptive equipment just because it's so incredibly expensive. And again, for the same reason, wheelchair basketball and adaptive sports really saved my life, and want to be able to be a role model and be able to give back to these kids. That's kind of my story in a few minutes.
That's a great story. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. So I want to just kind of drop into the fact that you're currently a state rep. You mentioned how your first race you ran, you won by 6 votes. When you ran for re-election, you've increased that margin. You're in one of the reddest districts in the state of Iowa. So just talk to us a little bit about how you were able to accomplish that and what your experience has been being a representative in a legislative body with Republican majorities, but really being able to build relationships, reach across the aisle, and kind of develop a reputation as a common sense bipartisan representative. How have you been able to accomplish that?
Yeah, that's, I think, how I would define myself as well. I would define myself as a common sense, much like Tom Harkin, prairie populist Democrat. The way I was able to do it, first, without a doubt, is it's just grit, hard work, determination. It was not fun. It was not easy to go out every single day, rain, shine, extreme heat, extreme cold, to go out there every single day and crawl up all these stairs, right? I represent Council Bluffs. It's one of the few places in Iowa that is very hilly. Almost every single house has multiple stairs, sometimes 20 or 30. And I was not very efficient, but I was very effective. And I found that when I would get up in front of someone, the very first question they would always ask me is, well, first, how in the world did you get up here? And I would say, well, I crawled up here. That's how important your vote is. And that was also doubled down after I only won by 6 votes of like, no, your vote really does matter. I'm up here because you might be the deciding vote. It's the hard work, but then it's also, it's messaging. I think people see an authenticity. Oh, somebody that has overcome a lot of economic adversity, and also on the healthcare side. Everyone in my district out here is struggling with the same things. I represent, blue collar town. As I said, 65% of my community is at or below the poverty line. And I think being able to speak to these same issues. People are struggling to keep their lights on. They're struggling to keep food on the table. This is what they want. They don't care Democrat or Republican largely. What they want is they want someone that really cares about them, cares about the issues that matter to them. And that's the kitchen table issues. And that's what I spoke to them about. I went on the doors and I said, I want to make sure that we're all having a livable wage. I want to make sure that your housing is affordable, whether you're trying to buy a house or whether you're a renter. And I talked about with a great deal of credibility, especially being someone with a visible disability, of how important accessible and affordable healthcare is, and how important it is to have accessible and affordable pharmaceuticals. Far too often, as I'm out here knocking doors, I would hear from folks, I lost my job, I changed my job, I changed insurance, and now I cannot afford to take my medication. And I can empathize with that as someone that, has my whole entire life had to take multiple forms of medication. And it's just, I say, we should not be living in the richest country on earth, and people are having to make the determination, do I pay my bills or do I take my pills? I also talked about the importance of our public schools, which are being eroded. It was a point of personal pride of all Iowans. We were number one in public education when I was in grade school, and now we have precipitously dropped. And now we're giving blank checks, 44% increase to private schools. And our public school funding can't even keep up with inflation. I would talk about the growing cancer rate here in Iowa. That's something that touches every single person, Republican or Democrat, touched my life. I lost my grandma to pancreatic cancer. My dad had stage 4 throat cancer. I just found out 2 weeks ago that my sister has breast cancer. It's these are the things of like, let's put some funding and appropriation towards that. And now with what we're doing with the current administration, we're cutting NIH funding. We put almost nothing to the funding there, even though we're the only state with a growing cancer rate. I also would talk a lot about infrastructure and just having functioning roads, and talk about clean air and clean water. I mean, water, we've got a legitimate water crisis in this state, and far too many people are exposed to water that is unhealthy, and far too high of nitrates, and lack of soil regulation and soil runoff. These are the things that I talked about. Again, I'm a populist. I'm a common sense populist. I ran away from the culture war, divisive issues, and just say, here's what we want and what we need. We want people that really care about Iowans, not just about donors, not just about lobbyists, not just about large corporations, but really care about the people and know and understand and empathize with that in a genuine way, and is going to go out there and work really, really hard across the aisle to to provide solutions to people's problems. And I think that's what I was able to do to get elected. I really do believe the right candidate, the right message, and the right work ethic, you can't discount third, you can win in some adverse conditions. That's how I've been able to do it.
So it's clear to me that healthcare and healthcare reform has been central to your messaging, central to your focus as an elected official. And it sounds like it's going to play a big role in this next big endeavor of running for the United States Senate. I heard you say affordable, accessible healthcare. So what does that mean? I think a lot of my listeners, a lot of the folks who read our essays here, want to see some form or another of universal healthcare. At this stage, are you prepared to call for that in your Senate campaign?
I fundamentally believe that healthcare is a human right, and that we need to be doing all that we possibly can to provide accessible and affordable healthcare. That is something that is really, really important to me. As you indicated, as someone that has gone through all the healthcare struggles that I have, the reason why I ran, and let's talk about Medicaid, for example, because I think that is going to be maybe the most preeminent issue of the upcoming elections. And it's Medicaid, it's Medicare, and it's Social Security. These are the social safety nets that the big, beautiful bill and the Republicans are looking at eroding and defunding. Again, you're looking at 1 in 5 Iowans that are on Medicaid, 2 in 5 in the rural communities, 40% of those that are children. And then additionally, you're looking at the elderly, you're looking at veterans, you're looking at disabled individuals. And disabled individuals, through no fault of their own, because the only way they can get these supports, like a direct care worker, is through Medicaid. Right now in our Medicaid in Iowa, we have one of the longest wait lists of any state, even though we don't have that big of a population. 52,000 disabled individuals are on the home and community-based waiver system. The longest wait list right now is 6.5 years. That is just fundamentally wrong. That's just like, we can all recognize that is wrong. That should not be taking place in the richest country on earth. We've closed 31 nursing homes and skilled nursing facilities in Iowa just in the last 4 years. That is due to lack of reimbursements. We have a direct care worker crisis shortage. Who does that affect? The elderly, the disabled. In the rural communities, the average direct care worker right now $13.50. Half of our direct care workers are on Medicaid themselves. You cannot find a single dentist outside of pro bono work right now that is taking a Medicaid patient. And so who is that affecting? That's affecting poor kids. That's affecting the elderly, disabled. That is just fundamentally wrong, especially when you're looking at all the comorbidities associated with a lack of oral care. On and on and on we could go. I mean, I could talk for an hour about just how broken our Medicaid system is already. And now we're looking at even more significant cuts to this. And when you're looking at something like SNAP benefits, food assistance, 90% of the families in Iowa that are on SNAP are families that either have children in the home, someone who is disabled in the home, someone who is elderly, or someone who is a veteran. 90%. And so we're going to lose 110,000 people in Iowa at minimum are going to end up losing their health care, their basic health care, all to just make tax breaks to billionaires. It is fundamentally an immoral wrong. And so that's why I say that I think I have an ability of someone who has lived off of these supports. I understand it. I went to the free summer lunch programs to be able to eat. I'm only here because of the AEAs and the special education services. I'm someone that really understands the plights of the most vulnerable in our society. And I can speak to it on a personal level. And 90% of Iowans have heard what Joni has said, which is, well, we're all going to die. And that just shows a complete lack of empathy and understanding of what Iowans are going through, because Iowans are struggling. When I was out knocking doors, the only single issue that I found, and this is regards of, farthest Republican, Democrat, and this was fascinating to me, was that our healthcare system is broken, of that we pay 3 times more than any other country. We get by far the worst results. And everyone to a person was like, yeah, we're paying too much. We're not getting enough. And this is something I'm going to lean in very heavy on. It's where she's vulnerable.
So it seems like healthcare and access to healthcare is an issue that's resonating across the political spectrum with voters across the state. And so we're going to move into this next section of the interview where I want to talk a little bit about your race for the U.S. Senate. But, I just, one more follow-on question before we get into the details there. I mean, one of the issues that I think Democrats at a national level are trying to figure out is how do we communicate our positions to people who right now, at least on the Republican side, are voting against their interests. So everything you explained to me makes sense. You went chapter and verse. You've got the details. You know the numbers. You talk about that 90% of Iowans statistic that you threw out. Surely some of those Iowans are Republicans who have in the past supported Joni Ernst, who have perhaps voted for Donald Trump, literally voting against their interests. How do we talk to those folks and help them understand that this current path that Joni Ernst, Donald Trump has taken the country is harmful to them? How do we have that conversation and persuade those voters?
It's hard work, but we've got to get out there, and that's what we've got to be able to do. We've got to have folks like myself that can communicate with Republicans and with independents and have hard conversations. You got to get a little uncomfortable at times. But I would say this, Iowans are waking up to this issue without a doubt. Again, we're looking at turnouts that we've never seen here in Pottawatomie County and the rural communities. We did an event out in Harlan, Iowa, standing room only, did an event just yesterday in Clear Lake, filled completely. There is an energy that I have not felt in this state really ever. And I think people are finally waking up. Joni Ernst and the current administration, they're just not looking out for Iowa and Iowans. And I think we can look at Trump's last midterm, 2018, where we ended up winning 3 of the 4 congressional seats. At our core, we are a common sense state. And I think that there's real energy to start winning races. I will say this, though. The Republicans have done a good job of forcing us down the rabbit hole of divisive culture war issues that may not apply or may only apply to a handful of individuals. And they really, really make that the primary parts of their platform. We on the Democratic side need to do a far better job of making sure people understand, no, we are the party of the worker. We are the party of the middle class. We are the party for affordable health care, for clean water, for doing something about cancer rates, of supporting your public schools, of supporting your rural communities, supporting small family farms, supporting small businesses, that for working families, we are the party that's working for you. Far too often, the average Republican is going there and he's voting on guns or abortion or whatever it may end up being. 3.2 million Iowans need housing, they need health care, they need jobs, they need a livable wage. We got 2% of Iowans that are still making minimum wage, for God's sakes. And that's what we have got to do a better job of. And that's what I'm certainly going to run on, is I'm a populist. I am looking out for you, the middle class, and not just looking out for DC lobbyists and large corporations. I think that now people, again, are waking up. They're seeing what this oligarchy is doing. They're seeing what the 1% is doing, that we're moving into this second Gilded Age, and just the naked corruption that is taking place. And they've had enough of it. And this is our moment. And it's going to take candidates like me to be able to do it.
So you've entered into what is already a crowded primary. We've interviewed my friend Zach Walls, my friend JD Schulten already on this show. We're trying to schedule with Jackie Norris. We're trying to schedule with Nathan Sage. So clearly that's an indicator that, one, Iowans are fed up, and two, that Joni Ernst is vulnerable. How would you differentiate yourself from this primary? And I have to say, I know all of your primary opponents. A few of them I know quite well. I think this is going to be one of the most exciting races in America this cycle. And not just the general election. I think the primary is going to be quite exciting. But how do you differentiate yourself from the rest of the primary field?
I agree with you as well. This is showing that we've got an awful lot of energy. And this is going to be great because this is going to make us all sharp and better. This is going to bring a ton of media attention to Iowa, which is going to be great. I really do believe 2026 Iowa, we are going to be the center of the political universe. When it comes to me making a distinction between the rest of them, it's some of the things that we've talked about. It's my life experience. I don't look or sound or feel like your average senatorial candidate. If nothing else, I'm 20 years younger than even the average age of a U.S. senator. I'm one of the 1 in 5 Iowans that has a disability. We have essentially no representation at all levels of government. And so coming from that community, but it's overcoming the economic situation. It's overcoming the healthcare situations. I'm also someone that's been able to represent my country. That shows an enormous amount of hard work and genuine patriotism. 4 times, won 2 gold medals. That's actually something that's very unifying. I'm someone that has been able to win very, very difficult elections. That's important. I've been able to beat Republicans out here. Again, the Democrat that represent the reddest part of the state that is represented by a Democrat in the 2 hardest years. Trump won the county by 20, won the communities by double digits. I've been able to win by nearly 6 points, outperforming the top of the ticket by basically 50% more than any other Democrat. And that's without having to betray my democratic values. Even though that I've been in a trifecta minority, I've been able to get policy, legitimate policy across the aisle, finished, signed by the governor. And I'm really, really proud of that. Ultimately, that's what people want. When I'm out here knocking doors in my constituents, when I'm out talking to Iowans, they say, that's what we want. Representatives that are there not to play political games, not to get their name in the paper, not to be on TV, but to say, help me solve the problems that are affecting America, that are affecting Iowans and are affecting the middle class, because a lot of people are suffering and they need it. They need representatives that really care and are going to do the hard work, because it's enormously hard work, not only get elected, but to be able to get something done and across the aisle. That's why I'm the guy to do it.
Heard you use the phrase prairie populace a couple times now. We had JD Schulten on a couple weeks ago. He used that phrase a few times. This is a phrase that, quite honestly, maybe 10 years ago in Democratic politics in the state of Iowa, political consultants might have advised you not to use. So what does being a prairie populist mean to you, and why does it seem to be resurging now in our politics?
What does it mean to me? A prairie populist, I would say that my hero, Senator Tom Harkin, would have considered himself a prairie populist. A prairie populist is someone that cares about people's jobs, about a livable wage, about their schools, about their hospitals, about their health care, about their water, about the environment. It's someone that cares about the people, about the middle class, about small businesses, small farms. It's someone that cares about social safety nets. It's someone that cares about Medicaid and Medicare. That to me is the essence of what a populist is. It's someone that is not going out there and fighting for millionaires and fighting for lobbyists and fighting for the establishment. It's someone that is out there fighting for the people, for Iowans. That's what that is. And regardless of how consultants would view that, that's who I am. I'm a common sense populist. And Tom Harkin is my hero. Because one of the reasons why I'm running, truthfully, is because I think that I am someone that understands in a deeply personal way the power and the impact of what a senator from Iowa can do. And Senator Harkin, the father of the American with Disabilities Act, that was essentially the Emancipation Proclamation for individuals with disabilities. It provided me a ramp onto society. Pre-ADA, no codes, restaurants, hotels, every public space. There's no bathrooms. There's no ramps. There's no sidewalk cutouts. Without the ADA, I do not have the economic and educational opportunities to be able to be successful in any way, shape, or form. And that's not only for me personally. That was for every disabled Iowan. That was for making societal change across the entire country. So I know at its best, when this is done correctly, the amazing impact that the Senate can have. The United States Senate is still the greatest vehicle to enact societal change that exists. And Iowa, for far too long now, for the last 12 years with Joni Ernst, we have not had someone that's out there looking out for Iowa and for Iowans, just for donors, large corporations. And Iowans deserve to have someone in the mold of Tom Harkin that is going to go out there and fight for social and economic justice, fight for the middle class, fight for the most vulnerable, fight for social safety nets. He's the reason why I'm here. I know what that can do. I know what it's meant to my life, and Iowans deserve to have someone out there fight for the people again.
What's giving you hope right now, Josh?
It's giving me hope as a people is everywhere that I'm going, even people that are struggling and their government isn't working for them. I'm seeing people all across my community, in a very red community of Council Bluffs and Carter Lake, and all across the state in Des Moines. And like I said yesterday in Clear Lake, there is finally hope and optimism of, as bad as it is getting right now with the administration, and it's not moving in the right direction. People know that. People are waking up. And I will say that with my launch video, I was amazed with the amount of support. And what I said with my
excellent video, by the way. I just got to interrupt here. We will run the video for our viewers, but excellent video. I sent a note to your team as soon as I saw it. Our mutual friend, Sammy Sheets, has been raving about it, but I do believe it's the kind of imagery that can move people. So great job on that.
Yeah, this is what I think as well. Of, what's giving me hope is at this point, millions of people that have seen the video. And I said when we started this, I wanted to do this different. I know I'm going to look and sound different than your average senatorial campaign. People are sick of the divisiveness. They're sick of the cynicism. They're sick of just this national malaise that we've had from all the divisive politics. And I said, I want to do something different. And I want to lean into hope and positivity and optimism and overcoming odds. And I think that there is such a yearning for that now in our politics, to get back to that, to someone that really understands the plight of the average person and has overcome a lot of odds, and now in the most patriotic way possible, trying to represent your community and your state and your country and make fundamental change, positive change. And it's given me a lot of hope.
One of the questions I've started to ask a lot of our guests is this: Democrats, we are good with rhetoric. If you look at some of the best speech givers in American political history, most of them have been Democrats. We can go there rhetorically, but it seems to be we don't match our rhetoric with bold action when we have power, when we get to positions of power. And I think Democrats, for the last decade or so have been disappointed by that. So my question to you is, do the people deserve, the people that are giving you hope, do they deserve bold action? If you pull this thing off, we get a majority in the Senate. Are we going to be content with our neoliberal instincts in the party to tend toward incrementalism, or is now the time for bold, sweeping action?
I do think it's time for some bold change. And certainly, look, I will say this, the map to the majority in the Senate goes right through Iowa. And so if we are able to get in the majority, yes, I will be someone that is going to be pushing for all of the things that I have talked about. And that can be bold in action and on healthcare and certainly on affordable housing. I think there are some great ideas on what we can do on ending this oligarchy and these monopolies and the influence of large multinational corporations and those groups not paying their fair share. Certainly the 1%. It is time for some bold policy.
We only have a few more minutes in this interview, so I want to try to get through a series of questions I like to ask a lot of our guests.
Can I say one thing real quick before we lean in?
Sure.
I would just say that one of the reasons why it's been difficult to have bold action is because of the lack of campaign finance reform and because of the incredible influence of corporate money into our politics. And I believe that Citizens United was one of the worst decisions in the history of the Supreme Court. And one of the areas that you can, because I did not speak about it before, that we absolutely need to make fundamental change on. If you want to clean up about 75% of the issues that we're having, it is through campaign finance reform. And that is an area we need to make absolutely bold action on because it is ruining politics at every single level.
At every level and on both sides of the aisle, right? We've got Democrats captured by special interests, just like we've got Republicans captured by special interests. I agree with you, and I appreciate you making that point. What's one question you wish more journalists or voters would ask you, and why?
One of the questions that I've always asked myself is that I wish more people would think about and we'd put more time and energy towards is why don't, when voters go to the ballot box, why don't they equate what happens with them with their health care directly to how they're voting? Because like I said, when I'm out there knocking doors, and it didn't matter what their score was, the most conservative Republican, and they would complain, oh, my daughter or me, I've been denied this and denied that. It's amazing to me. And yet these people just don't, when they go to the ballot box, they don't equate of these policies and these healthcare barriers are directly because of how you're voting. And I've never understood that. And that's a question I wish we would ask more of. Why are people going to the ballot box, like you said, and voting against their economic self-interest? Or why don't they go to the ballot box and they think about these larger issues that pertains to all of us? Why don't we have affordable healthcare? Why don't we have affordable pharmaceuticals, affordable housing? Why don't we have a livable wage? Why aren't we raising the minimum wage? And why aren't you going and voting on that? Because that all of us need functioning schools and all the things like that, as opposed to just these niche issues that only apply to a handful of individuals.
Yeah, that's great. I would say, I think part of the issue is people's identities are tightly wound around politics, right? So it feels like a betrayal of one's identity to support a Democrat if your identity has become, the Republican Party has become Donald Trump. And I don't know the answer to how we unravel that, but we are seeing a kind of tribalism in politics that I think causes people to stick to one side, even if that side is hurting them.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that. Tribalism and in this push towards party over country and win at all cost, even if that's going to have very negative impacts to your constituents or to your states or to your communities. We've got to move away from that.
If you could guarantee one lasting change for the next generation of Iowans, what would it be?
Without a doubt, access to affordable healthcare. I think that would be one of the most meaningful things that we could possibly do in a society.
What is one failure or loss that taught you something you could not have learned otherwise?
Losing my grandma to cancer, especially pancreatic cancer, it was horrific, and it just taught me about the frailty of life, and then to enjoy every moment because you don't know how many that you're going to get. On a personal side, also, I was cut from the national team actually 6 straight years, and I went back year after year after year, and I said, well, eventually I'm going to get good enough that you're not going to be able to cut me anymore. And just that grit, that hard work, that determination. My dad always told us when we were young, he said, I don't care what you do, but whatever you do it 100% and do it to the best of your ability. And on everything that I've done, I've tried to lean in on that. That's exactly how I intend on doing this this U.S. Senate race. But it's only oftentimes through struggle and sometimes even through suffering that you build a deep character and a deep mental strength. And in some capacity, I think that I'm uniquely qualified for what I'm getting into with the toxicity of modern politics because of that deep mental strength from the struggle that I've gone through.
We'll wrap with this one, Josh. History looks back on this political era. What do you hope your name is attached to in the story? What do you want people to say about you and who you were during this time?
I want people to say that he is someone that worked as absolutely as hard as he could, was genuine, was authentic, was a true man of the people, deeply caring and empathizing with the struggles of the common man, and did everything that he could to improve the lives of those that didn't win the genetic lottery. And that's both on the economic side and on the healthcare side. And he fought for the most vulnerable in the society. And really my political North Star is a quote, and it says that the test of our progress of a society is not whether we add more to those with abundance, but whether we have enough to those with the least. And I hope that when this is all said and done, they say something like that about me.
Josh Turek, thank you so much for joining Dispatch Revolution. Best of luck to you in this primary. And if you make it through the primary, best of luck in the general election. We need more politicians like you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, my friend. I really appreciate this.